All right, so today we are taking a look at scaling a graph. All right, this is very similar to scaling when we have missing pieces. In other words, we had some problems where it was like 10, 20, 50. What would these missing pieces be? All right, and then obviously we had to figure out how much it went up by each time, and then we had to use that information to fill in the missing numbers. And we're going to kind of do something very similar to that, all right? Except this time we're going to start with a data table. And if you're like, what's a data table, Mr. Nelson? Well, that's what we see right up here. And so let's say our data is revolved around something like hours studied and test percentage. So we're going to see if the hours you study has an impact on the score that you receive on your test. And so let's say a student studies for no time at all, then their test score is 62%, and then another student studies for 2 hours, and this time their test score is 80%. Another student studies for 4 hours, and they have a test score of 94%. And then another student studies for 1 hour, they have a test score of 73. And then there's a student that studies for 5 hours, believe it or not, and here they scored 97. Okay, so now the first thing that we need to figure out when looking at this data is what would be our y variable and what would be our x variable. In other words, what would be our independent and dependent variables. And so what I mean by that is we have two axes, right? We have our y, that's the one that goes vertically, and then we have our x, and that's the one that goes horizontally across. And so we have to figure out between hours studied and test percentage, which one would be our y-axis, which would be our x. Our y is going to be our dependent variable, and our x is going to be our independent variable. So hopefully watching that video kind of helps you realize which one would be for hours studied and which one would be for test score. And so here we're looking at, do the hours that you study impact your test score? All right, so do the hours that you study impact your test score? Another way of saying that is, does your test score depend on the hours you study? Okay, so remember the keyword depend is going to be your dependent variable. And since we're wondering if the test score depends on something else, that's going to be over here as our y-axis. And we're going to record this as a percentage. And then over here, we're going to have on our x-axis hours studied. All right, and that's just going to be a gradual climb from 0 to 5 hours. In other words, when we're trying to scale this graph, we're going to look at what is the range of our numbers here. In this case, it's from 0 to 5. So if we do 5 minus 0, that's going to give us 5 for our range. And then how many spaces do we have here? Well, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but really we'd be making 5 jumps. We're going to start at 0 here in this first one. All right, and so if we're going to do 5 divided by the number of jumps that we're going to make, well, that's going to give us 1. So we're going to go up by 1 each time here. In other words, we start at 1 here, right? And we go to 2, 3, 4, and then end at 5. So we have our x-axis complete. And these are hours studied. And now we're going to take a look at plotting our test percentages. And so we need to, again, look at our range here. And so my test scores are ranging from 62% all the way up to 97%. All right, and so my range, I could say, is about 60% to 100%, which would be a range of 40%. And so I need to take a look at, okay, how many sections do I have here off on the side? Well, I have 1 hash mark, 2, 3, 4, 5. So here I'm doing 40 divided by 5, the number of jumps I'm making, and that gives me 8. And so I guess I could go up by 8% here, but that seems a little complicated. Instead, I'm just going to go up by 10%. All right, and so here I'm going to put a 0 because we always start at 0, but then I'm going to show a little break in my graph. So we go from 0 and we jump up to 60%. Next we have 70%, 80%, 90%, and 100%. All right, so do you see how we created our scaling for this graph? We found our range between 60 and 100, so our lowest data set, and then our highest value in the data set. The difference was 40%, and then we divided 40% by the number of jumps that we would make here. All right, so it's very similar to what you guys had worked on earlier when we were scaling, not necessarily the graphs, but just scaling those numbers that were on a straight line like we see down here. Okay, and so now I can go ahead and I can plot the data. So first off, I'm going to look at my first data point. In here it says 0 hours studied, 62%. So I'm going to go over here to 0 hours studied, and then I'm going to go up to 60%. All right, so this would be my first point. And now I'm going to take a look at the next value set. We have 2 and 80%. So again, I'm going to go over here to 2 on my X, and then I'm going to go up to 80%. All right, so that'd be my second point. I'll put the points in yellow right now. And then I'm looking at my next one, and it says I'm going to go over to 4 hours and then up to 90%. So this person studied for 4 hours, and they got 94%. So they'd be between 90 and 100%, about right here. Now we're taking a look at 1 hour for 73%. So we're going to go here to 1 hour and up to 73%. And then finally, we're going to look at 5 hours, 97%. So I go over here to 5 hours, and then I go up here to 97%, which would almost be at 100%. All right, so there we see our 5 points. All right, you could write what the ordered pair would be above those points. So in other words, here above 1, I could write it as 1, 73, meaning I studied 1 hour and I got 73% on my test. I could do the same thing here for this next one over. Study for 2 hours and I got 80%. This is what we call an ordered pair. Remember, we have an X followed by our Y. You can remember that because X comes before Y in the alphabet. All right, so this looks like a good graph, and we've scaled it appropriately, meaning that our data tells us that, okay, if you do study, you do in fact do better on your test. All right, we can kind of see that straight line. I could go ahead and actually connect these dots if I wanted to. So we really see that relationship. All right, so now we're going to take a look at something a little bit more challenging. Here it was really easy to scale our x. We just went up by 1 hour each time. But this time we're going to do something with hours worked and money made. All about that money. All right, so let's say we work 1 hour, 4 hours, 7 hours, 9 hours, and 11 hours. All right, and we're going to see how much we go up by each hour. So here we make, say, $8. Here we make $32. And then we make 56, 72, 88. All right, so now we're going to scale this graph. So remember, how many jumps do we make for our x-axis? We're going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 jumps. And then we take a look at what our x would be. Well, we got to figure out what our x would be first. Is it going to be money made, or is it going to be hours worked? So hours worked, that's like a steady time that we're going to evaluate. And then the money made, that's going to be our dependent variable, because the money made depends on the hours we work. So we can go ahead and put money made over here because it depends on the other thing. That's our y-axis. And then we're going to take a look at our x, which is going to be our hours worked. And now we got to figure out an appropriate scale. So we're going from 1 to 10. So what is our scale here? Well, our scale is going to be our range, 11 to 1, so 10. And then how many jumps are we making? Well, we're making 5 jumps, so we can divide it by 5. So we should go up by about 2 each time. All right. So here we're going to start at 0, go up 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and then we do have an 11 here. And so you could, if you wanted, extend your graph a little bit and then put 11. Or if you decided to go up by 3s, 4s, or 5s, all of that would work as well. And then we're going to take a look at our y here. So we're going from 8 to 88. We'll do 0 to 90 to make things easy. And so here, from 0 to 90, we're going up again 2, 3, 4, 5 spaces. So I'm going to do 90 divided by 5, and that's going to give me, let's see, 18. So I could go up by 18 each time here on the y-axis, but I want to make it a little bit easier. So instead of choosing a weird number that ends in an 8, I'm going to just choose 20. So I'm going to start at 0, go to 20, 40, 60, 80, 100. Okay, so now let's go ahead and plot these points, because what we have done is we have scaled our graph. So here we're starting at 0, here we're starting at 0, and we're going all the way up to 11, and we're going all the way up to 100. And we're just trying to figure out how much we wanted to go up by between 0 and 2, 2 and 4, 4 and 6. We're going up by 2s, and then over on the left side, we're going up by 20s. All right? So when we plot our points, we're going to take a look at 1, 8. So if I go to 1, well, that would be between 0 and 2. And then I'm going to go up to 8. 8 would not be very far up. I'm going to do this in green. 8 would be about right here. See if I can get a green going. There we go. All right, so again, it'd be 1 over, and it would be 8 up. They'd meet right there. Now we're going to take a look at 4, which is right here, and we're going up to 32. So 30 would be like right in between 20 and 40, and then a little bit above that would be about right here. All right, now we're taking a look at 7 56. So it's going to be between 6 and 8 if we're doing 7. And then we're going to go up to where 56 would be. So I'm looking over here on my y-axis. 56 would be between 40 and 60, maybe about right there. So now I'm going to plot a point right where I think 56 is. And I'm going to take a look at 9 and 72. So again, that's going to be between my 8 and my 10. Put a 9 there, and we're going up to 72. Be about right there. And again, I could put this right here as 9, 72 as an ordered pair. My x comes first, followed by my y. And then the last one here, 11 over 88. So we're going to go over 11, and then we're going to go up to 88. So I'm looking over at my y, and it's about right here. That'd be where 88 would be. So I could actually connect my points here as well. I could go boom, 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 and we'll see that as we work, we make more money, obviously. So there's a correlation here, and we see our steady increase between hours worked and money made. All right, so one more time, when we scale the graph, we're going to divide, first off, the range of our graph by the number of jumps we would make, or the increments that we see. Okay, so on this last problem here, this will be straight from your book. You guys have one about bats, and it talks about the length of the bat from head to tail, and then the wingspan. And they're both in inches. And so it's saying, is there a correlation between the length and the wingspan? So if my length is, say, 5 inches, then the wingspan is 14. Then my next length is 3.5 inches, and the wingspan is 10. Is there a correlation between the length and the wingspan, the length and the wingspan? And so here we might as well just finish this problem off together. 4.25, 12, 4, 11, and 3, 10. And this is straight off of page 113. And so here when we're trying to figure out our scale, well, let's first take a look at our range here. So we're going from, it looks like, what's our lowest? 10 up to 14. Okay, if we want to make that a little bit easier on ourselves, we can say we're going from 15 to 10. It's nice when you have numbers that end in zeros or fives. So if I do 15 minus 10, I get 5. And then how many jumps do we have down here? Well, we still have 5 on the bottom. So I'm going to do 5 divided by 5. That's going to give me, start at 0. And then we make our first break. We're going to show a little break in the graph with this yellow line. And then we're going to go all the way up to 10 here. And now we can really blow up our image. It's going up by ones. All right, cool. So we have our x. And now you're going to figure out for our y, our length, what would our jump length be? In other words, what are we going up by each time? How are we going to scale this graph? So here again, we have 5 that we're going up by, 5 jumps. And then we go from 3 to 5, which is a difference of 2. And so now we're trying to figure out, okay, if we're going up a total of 2, this entire thing, and we make 5 jumps, what would be an appropriate number that we go up by each time? What do we go up by each time? All right, so you can finish off the problem here. We have a good start on it, and then obviously the final part would be to plot each one of these points as an ordered pair.